Hello and welcome to another episode of Mastering Adam, Becoming the Best Adam for Your Eve. My name is Casper Stockham and I have a great guest on the line, Don Sip. See, I forgot it already. Don, oh my goodness. Pronounce your name for me, sir.
Subsic.
Subsic. All right. Don Subsic is on the line and he's got a great program he's going to share with us as well. Before we get into this, I want to make sure we give a shout out to our sponsors. I am Love Builders. We have a new book called Divorce Proofing Your Marriage, which is out on Amazon, and it hit the hot new release list for a second. But you know how those things go; they kind of go up and down. Let me see here. I have it here. There's a copy of our cover for the book. We also have an ebook, a free ebook you can get from our website. All you have to do is go to the website and download the free ebook. The first 5 chapters of the book are there. And the first 5 chapters, by the way, are jam-packed with great information. So feel free to do that. And we also have an MVP call coming up here on the 18th of November. I'll get more into that a little bit later. All right. So, oops. Let's see, did I do that right? There we go. All right, so Don is a creator of Math Celebrity. He's going to tell us a little bit about that, and the fastest math tutor on the planet. Math Celebrity has helped 8.1 million students with 101 million math problems last year. Don is also the author of 4 books. So Don, welcome to the Mastering Adam podcast, and please give our audience a better understanding of who you are and what you do.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, as you said, I'm probably most known for Math Celebrity. So it's an automated online math tutor.
Mm-hmm.
You could think of it like a Google for math. So you put your math problem in the search box, push the button, and in a split second, we'll show you the step-by-step work as well as the answer. And we cover probably 3rd grade through college.
Well,
And the site reaches about 190 countries, anywhere where they speak English. So it's been fun. I've been doing it 16 years now, and it's a great way to help people get instant math help without leaving the house.
yeah. You know, I watched the 12-minute video you had talking about the program and asking the fundamental question, do I need algebra at the end of the day? Do I really need algebra? I mean, really, come on. But as you were explaining it, I started to realize, well, after listening to you, I kind of don't see algebra as math anymore. I see it as problem solving techniques and building up that skill set. So I wish I had took in more algebra when I was in school. Oh my goodness. Anyway, that's a great program. So I hope people check it out. Okay, today's topic on Mastering Adam is talking about the importance of good associations. I think it'd be easy for some to say that the Adam and Eve definitely should have been careful of their association with the talking snake. And even though I've said this on other shows, it appears that wasn't unusual for animals to talk, for Adam and Eve to talk to animals, because they were talking to a snake. And it also didn't appear to be a first conversation. In other words, I don't walk up to you, Don, and say, hey, Don, did your wife really say, I don't walk up to you and say that for the first conversation. That's like a second or third conversation, because we're talking back and forth, and I go back and regroup and come back for some give and take. So obviously it was a longer conversation. It appears to be a longer conversation that they had, but at the end of the day, they failed on the association part of the whole mix. What are some of your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree. I think the snake was a test, really, from God.
Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned, we're talking about associations, but associations, even if we're going to go one level above that, it's accountability.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to, especially as men, we have to be accountable for the people we talk to and the relationships and associations we build. So I don't know if I told you earlier, but I'm in the middle of a 30-day experiment of something called extreme ownership. And it's simultaneously terrifying and fascinating at the same time. And the summary is, whatever happens in my life, I have to own. And this includes, by the way, let's pretend I'm a hardworking guy. I'm nice to people I meet. I don't bother anybody. Don't stick my nose in anybody's business.
Mm-hmm.
But I go walking down the street to maybe go get gas or go shopping, and somebody comes around the corner and just starts yelling at me. Extreme ownership suggests that somehow, in some way, either my thoughts or my behavior has brought that on. And
Mm.
so, if we go back to the Bible example, I believe it was a test. It was a test from God to Adam to say, did you allow the snake and Eve to move your train of thought? Because if you remember, God told him, one of your first missions, and by the way, every man needs a mission that should
Yeah,
supersede everything in life. So
100%.
Adam's original mission was, don't eat from the tree. You're the first man. Like, you have to set the example.
Yeah.
And if you notice, when God catches him when he's naked in the Garden of Eden, and he asks him, how do you know that? What does Adam say? He immediately dumps the blame on Eve,
Yeah.
and Eve dumps the blame on the snake.
Yeah.
Had Adam been accountable and taken extreme ownership, none of this would have ever happened. So I that's how I look at the associations.
Yeah. No, I get it for sure. And I've had this similar conversation now. This is my 15th episode of Mastering Adam. And I've had this conversation in different forms for those 15 episodes. And one of the thoughts is that because we don't know the tone, when Adam pointed to Eve, we don't know the tone of it. We don't know if it was like a condescending tone or like, passing the blame, or if it was like, hey, you gave me this perfect helpmate, this perfect being to be with me, to love and to cherish. And because she fell, I needed to fall with her. I needed to basically be with her and not leave her. And so and we don't know. This is all speculation about those, that part of it, because there's not enough information in the Bible to draw a clear conclusion. But it could have been that he was protecting her. In other words, deciding to go with her into that sin, as opposed to saying, no, that's all, hey, Eve, that's on you. I'm staying here in the presence of God. He said, no, I'm going to go with this perfect being that you gave me, because love, at the end of the day, God loved man so much that he gave his only begotten son. So God is love. And he created Adam and Eve to love each other in that way, right? So maybe it was it was love that actually caused him to join Eve in that process.
Yeah, it's an interesting look at Adam and Eve's relationship. I was thinking about that yesterday too, and then I was reading further, and I think the punishment gives a clue too. So when God banishes them from the Garden of Eden,
yeah,
he tells Eve, your desire will be for your husband and he will
right.
rule over you. So it almost like God figured out, or maybe that was his plan all along, somebody has to lead. I don't know if it can ever be 50-50 in certain situations.
Yeah.
And then the second is he banishes Adam to go work the ground.
Right.
So get back to the roots. Because what's fascinating, I mean, we go back to ownership and accountability, is masculine energy. And when we're talking about masculine, feminine polarities,
yeah,
masculine energy, one of the powers of it is being grounded. So one of the best metaphors I ever heard was, you need to be the oak tree with the birds flapping around you.
Right.
And I was going back to the Bible when you and I had met last week, and I discovered something fascinating. The Old Testament's written in Hebrew. If you look at the translation for the word Adam, it actually comes from the noun Adama, which is ground or soil.
Wow. Yeah.
And when Adam gets punished, his first job is, you're going to go work the soil and work hard over the land. Yeah. So it's almost like God is teaching him how to be grounded, so mistakes like this don't happen again.
Yeah. Yeah. In the larger picture of the universe and everything else, God knew what was going to happen before it happened, because he had already been there and saw it happening. So he already prepared for it. So, I don't want to get too deep into it, but it could have been the plan all along. We just don't know. But we also know that God can take bad things that happen and turn them into good, turn them into something even better, in some cases. I also was fascinated by the fact that he kicked them out of the garden, but they were still in contact with him, because even his sons were in contact with him, because even, God's talking to Cain and Abel just like he was talking to Adam and Eve. They just weren't in they weren't in the protection of the garden, but they were still close enough to his presence to be able to have um, to communicate. And then when Cain killed Abel, and God asked him, "Where's your brother?" Because his blood is crying out, right? And and Cain's punishment was to be totally banished from God's presence. And Cain was like, you might as well just kill me now. I can't. That's not even something that I can even survive. And he said, don't worry, you're going to survive. You're just going to survive outside of my presence. So I just found that fascinating, because a lot of times we feel that when Adam and Eve fell and they were kicked out of the garden, that was kind of like the last time that they spoke with God, and even the Bible is clear that there was some more communication going on.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at throughout the Bible, there's stories of repentance, and then people come back into the inner circle. I mean, this happens in real life too.
Right.
Have you ever had friends or business associates that maybe for a time the vibe just wasn't there, or the chemistry wasn't there, and then suddenly later on it's back again? So
Mm-hmm.
I think the Bible's a great example of that. And you talked about Cain. I mean, you talked about the ultimate punishment. So he'll survive, but there's no protection. So I think there's levels of associations. There's the inner circle, there's friends, there's colleagues. And so as a man, the best way to test this is, does this person add value to your life in some way,
Yeah.
or is there some sort of chemistry? Because as we've seen in the Bible, there's very good stories of accountability and association, like in 1 Corinthians 15:33, bad company corrupts good morals.
Yeah.
So as a man, you need to detect or pick up on, is this person going to be a value add for my life or a drag on my life?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of examples in the Bible, to your point about associations, because like Lot, for example, when he was associated with Abraham, things were going great for him. But as soon as they kind of parted, because of the herds were getting so, matter of fact, he was prospering so much that Abraham was like, dude, you go over there, I'll go over here, you go to the left, I'll go to the right, because our wealth, our herds, and everything else is just growing so big, it's getting confusing for the people that are managing our herds, right? But by Lot separating, he kind of moved away from the blessing. He moved away from being associated with someone that was so plugged in to God, and we we know what happened. He wound up going down to Sodom, and he just kind of going with the flow, going with whatever's going on. I'm not saying that he was directly involved, but he was in the city. He's at the city gates hanging out. When the angel showed up, Lot's at the city gate. He said, hey guys, I don't know if you want to go in there, because it's a mess, right? Folks, if you're joining us on the show live, you can comment on our Facebook page. I'm monitoring some of those pages. You can comment live if you have a question for Don or myself. We're getting into this talk about the importance of good associations as it relates to Adam and Eve, and different stories, and also in real life. I've heard many times from motivational speakers like Brian Tracy and Les Brown and all these guys, and they all talk about association. Who are the 5 people that you're hanging around? And if you're not hanging around the right people, you're not going to be going in the right direction. You got to really be mindful of who you spend that kind of quality time with. Now, it doesn't mean that everybody that you are with has to be focused on your growth or whatever, but you have to pay attention to who you're listening to, right? Who you're allowing to counsel you on just stuff. And I am very, very picky about who I spend quality time with. I obviously spend quality time with my family, but I'm saying outside of my family, I only have a handful of people that I listen to on a regular basis, because I want to make sure that I'm listening to the right voices, when I'm doing whatever I'm doing.
No, you bring up a great point. I was just talking to a former alcoholic a few months ago, and he's turned his life around, but he talks about the point where he slowly started tapering the drinking back, but he couldn't quite get a handle on it. And he said, I realized the problem was, it wasn't always me, it was my association. So even as I cut back from like 6 drinks a day to 2. I was still hanging out with people or hanging around people that were having 6 drinks a day.
Right.
So as soon as I switched my associations over to people that either don't drink or maybe have a beer on occasion,
Hmm.
it got exponentially easier for me to change my life.
Yeah.
And this goes back to environment, right? The environment is not just the people you're hanging out with, but the places you're at. Is it going to be easy for you to quit drinking when you live or hang around bars or pubs all the time? No, it's
Right.
not. So environment matters too with associations.
Yeah, yeah. The associations and the input that you're allowing to come into your mind. What are you listening to on a daily basis? I'm old enough to be a part of the book reading era. To where what books are you reading? Right now, the kids nowadays are watching TikTok for 30 seconds. To get their information, but back in the day, Think and Grow Rich, Magic of Thinking Big, How to Win Friends and Influence People, all these iconic books, obviously the Bible as well, um, are books that we should be reading to elevate our association. Sorry, had a call coming in. By the way, Proverbs 13:20 tells us, whoever walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm. So that's very wise words from the Bible, and there's a lot of those kind of words from the Bible.
Yeah, I mean, the Bible's filled of examples of hazard and peril and how to avoid it. I also like, you just reminded me of Psalm 26:4. I do not sit with deceitful men. That's how it starts.
Right.
Simply by that act of removing yourself from the company of anybody who lies as a habit will
Mm-hmm.
instantly improve your life.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. You got it. You got it, folks. This is a great conversation with Don. If you want to chime in, feel free to reach out to us on social media if you have a question or two. Um, so, what do you think we can learn from Adam's experience in the Garden of Eve when it comes to just surrounding ourselves with individuals who share our values and faith?
I just read it last night again before we were going to meet, and I was
Mhm.
thinking about this very question. And I think the one lesson I've learned, both from that story as well as association in general, is something called inversion.
Mm.
So I don't know if you're familiar with Warren Buffett's partner, Charlie Munger, his investment partner.
Mm.
Charlie's in his mid 90s now, but full of incredible wisdom. I mean, he reads more than you can imagine, but he talked about inversion once and it changed my life. So inversion says if you're trying to learn a new skill or a new hobby, instead of trying to figure out what to do right,
Mm.
instead figure out what you do wrong to harm progress and then eliminate it. And
Wow.
this is so powerful because it works on the principle of addition by subtraction. I'm going
Mhm.
to throw in a math quote there, addition by subtraction. So an example of this, like I was reading Adam and Eve last night about making bad decisions, and I remember just about over a year ago,
Mhm.
I was having more arguments with my kid, more arguments with my wife, and I started thinking about, am I secretly the reason behind the energy in the house?
Mm.
And so I did an audit of what my supplements I take, things I eat, things I drink, who I'm hanging out with, and something just came to me. Caffeine is making me too jittery. I don't know
Mm.
where that came from, but let me give it up for a week. So we were on vacation. I gave it up for a week, and the
Mhm.
amount of arguments in the house reduced by like 90%. So
Wow.
this goes back to inversion, right? Instead of adding stuff, what could I add to be a better dad or a
Right.
better husband?
Right.
What can I take away to stop me from being a better dad? And that was it. And I mean, that was honestly an 80-20 fix. And it's just like Adam and Eve, it's like one bad decision basically threw you out of the confines of God's protective service. I mean, you were
Yeah.
still in contact with him, but you were kicked out of the Garden of Eden.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great early story in the Bible for life in general, is just inversion. Stop doing harmful stuff, and the right way will just appear.
I like that. I like that. I've actually practiced that, not calling it that, but I've kind of practiced that. Um, I think my entire life, because when you're young, you're doing all these things and not really caring if it's harming your body or whatever. You just do it. Smoking or drinking, whatever. But I started the more I matured, the more I realized that, okay, I probably shouldn't be doing that. And then I look at people that are 20 years, 30 years, 40 years older than me, and finding out that they have been doing that their entire life. And I'm saying, I don't want to be there, right? I want to be healthier. So, I quit smoking probably like 30 years ago, and I'm even now, even to this day, I'm cutting back or eliminating things that don't add to, to the inversion part of it, the things that I just don't need to do because they will allow me to, to go forward. It's fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, and the fascinating thing about inversion too is it's not linear. So you may take away three things in your life.
Mm-hmm.
One or two of them may give you a 10 or 15% gain, but that third thing gives you a 250% gain.
Right.
So it's all about testing and just eliminating bad behaviors and decisions.
Yeah, yeah. And it's amazing because I talk to people all the time that don't. I can't imagine why. And forgive me, I don't know if you smoke or not, but I used to smoke, so now I'm a pain in the neck non-smoker, right? And I just can't for the life of me figure out why we would do that to ourselves. In fact, I have an interesting smoking story. So I quit smoking for like a year or two, and then something happened. I got mad or whatever, and so I decided I'm a buy a pack of some. I'm a smoke. So I buy a pack of cigarettes, and I just happened to be getting on the interstate to go for like a 30-minute drive up to this one location. So I opened up the pack, and I light the cigarette up, and almost ran off the road because it's like, oh my God, this thing I was coughing. I said, oh my God, I threw the cigarette out the window down. I threw the pack out the window, and that was it. That was the end of my, because we had to trick ourselves into doing it in the first place, right? The first time you lit up a cigarette, it wasn't like, oh, this is awesome. It's like, I mean, it almost killed you, but you kept doing it because other people were doing it. And obviously you can survive it. So you just keep doing it. And then it becomes a habit, right? And then in the old 21 days, you do it for 21 days, it's a done deal. It's a habit.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up the great question is why? Why did I start smoking or why did I start drinking? I mean, going back to the story I told you about the alcoholic.
Yeah.
I had talked to him. I said, "Why do you think you kept drinking?" And he said, "Because alcohol got me out of my head."
Yeah.
Because we have incessant chatter going on in our head all day instead of getting present. And so one of the things he adopted was I realized there's other ways to get out of my head besides alcohol and drugs. Mm-hmm. One was prayer. And if you look at the Latin root of the word prayer, it's reaching out. When you're reaching out to God, you're not in your head, right? You're present in present moment. So yeah, you bring up a great point. Is like, why am I doing these behaviors? If you can get to the root cause, and it takes a lot of humility. Most people can't do a self audit of themselves, but if you can and get to the root cause, I mean, the path just appears.
Absolutely, it does, folks. This is a great conversation with Don, and if you're listening on Facebook, you can definitely chime in and get into the conversation. We only got a couple minutes left, but if you want to ask a question of Don or myself, feel free to do that. Just going over my notes here. So, we have responsibility to lead and guide others in the right direction. And whether we consider ourselves leaders or not, people are watching us. Our children are watching us. Our spouse are watching us. Our coworkers are watching us. And so whether you want to be a leader or not, people are watching you. So they're watching you fail and say, okay, well, I don't want to do whatever Casper did there because he's failing. Or they're watching you excel at something and say, man, I'd really love to be like Don because he's a successful business person or whatever's going on. So we have to take that responsibility on personally to make sure that we are doing the right things for all the people around us.
Yeah, I mean, I would say lessons from that point you just brought up are, as a good leader, I think you need to be non-reactive, especially as a parent. Mm-hmm. If your kids look to you and you're constantly being pulled around by emotions, they're going to be pulled around by emotions. But if you can keep your feet, especially as a dad, keep your feet rooted to the ground, like we talked about earlier, mm-hmm. and be non-reactive, I think people look to that as a source of peace. The second is when you make a decision, go with it. You You got to have some certainty, right? And even if the decision turns out to be wrong, if you can be certain in your path but own up to your mistakes, people
Yeah.
respect that.
Yeah.
And the third is, and this is a big one, at least for me. So, skin in the game. So I always say never fly on a helicopter that the mechanic won't fly on, or never eat food that the cook won't try first. And I think
Yeah.
as a good leader, you have to have skin in the game with a decision. You can't just say go do this and there's zero effect on you.
Right. Right. Well, when it comes to leadership, servant leadership to me is the leadership that I don't mind following, right? A servant leader, a leader that's out front. The leader says, hey, not you go, let's go. Let's go do this. Let's put this together. I used to do a lot of workshops in the inner city with inner city youth, and I'd give them an example of leadership, and we'd be in a room with tables and chairs and everything else. I said, when we set up this room for this event, a boss type leader would say, all right, guys, you guys need to set this room up. It needs to look like this. Here's a picture of it or whatever. I'm going to go have some coffee, or I'm going to go whatever. But a servant leader says, okay, guys, we need to set this room up. We got to have in this configuration. Can somebody help me with this table? Right. And then they start basically getting involved. And that doesn't mean they stay that way, but at least in the beginning to show that show their team that they are willing to roll up their sleeves just like everybody else and get involved with their process to get it done. So yeah, it's something that as leaders, there's different leadership styles, and to me, servant leadership style is one of the ones that I appreciate the most. Can you hear me? You there?
Yes.
No, I'm sorry.
Yes. Sorry, I was on mute.
Yeah.
No, I mean servant leadership's a great way to model other leaders, because you have some leaders that are very vocal and some that are more laid back, but they still take ownership, just like you said. So it's good to see both kinds.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have this question that I ask a lot of my guests, and it's not a one size. It's not a one size fits all question. Everybody has a different take on it, but I love to get different takes on it. And the question is, are relationships supposed to be 50-50?
I'd say no. I'd say certain people excel in things that their partner does not, so they should take more of a leadership role in that. So for example, I don't have as much shame about making a decision that may hurt people's feelings if it's in the best interest of our family to protect my kids, versus people that don't want to, they're conflict averse, if that's a better way to put it. But I think the people with the more skill set or the more fortitude for certain things should take the lead on that. But I think 50-50 doesn't always work.
Right. No, that's a great take on it for sure. And I agree with everything you just said. My wife and I, we teach and coach couples, and any marriage that's 50, well, I mean, think about anything 50-50, right? Would you want Map Celebrity? Would you want your participation in that to be 50-50? It's like, it's not 50-50 is never a good mix, because if you have 50-50, then you have 100% if you have 50-50. But in most cases, you don't, like you're saying, right? The skill sets, right? So if you're very lucky, you have a spouse or a partner that can fill in where you are weak, and you can fill in where they're weak. But both parties in any situation, whether it's a business partnership or marriage or whatever, you should be striving for 100. You personally should be striving for 100% of you. Now, you may fall short, and most of us do fall short. But if you fall short to 70 and your partner's striving for 100 and they fall short to 70, that's 140. So now you're ahead of the game. You're moving forward. But if you're trying to get to 50% just so that you can match their potentially 50%, more than likely you're going to fall short.
Yeah, I mean, it helps with decision making too, and not just skill sets. I mean, imagine that somebody's on the ground, they have a critical wound where they're bleeding out, and if somebody doesn't fix them in 3 minutes, they're dead.
Yeah.
There's two doctors standing there who could both fix them, and the one says, we're 50-50, you do it. No, you do it. No, you do it. And then the person's dead. So there always needs to be somebody that steps up and takes ownership of the process, even if they're not the most skilled, but they're able to handle the organization of the task. I think they should step up. So no, it should not be 50-50.
Yeah, yeah. Very good, very good. Downward, I appreciate your time, man. You were an awesome guest. We'll definitely have to have you back. Um, we have a free ebook I talked about earlier. We have a 5-minute love assessment you can take on our website, IamLoveBuilders.com. And we want you to become a MVP, the most valuable partner in your relationship. And what we're launching here in a very short period of time is on the 18th of November, we're launching our MVP call. It's going to be our launch call. It's going to be free. It's going to be broadcast live on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and so forth. Excuse me. But you want to be on this call. It's for single or married couples. It's going to be a great time. We're going to have special guests on sharing some of their expertise. And we're just going to be getting positioned for a bi-weekly call that you can get on to help you in your relationships. It's going to be a really fun time. And we look forward to seeing as many of you on that as possible. And we will see you on the next show. Bye for now.